What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Monday recap, breaking down week 4. We had some heartbreak, particularly Malik Nabers going down for the season. One of those absolute gut punches. I don't know. I felt this one way harder than the Joe Burrow one, probably just because I have so much more Malik Nabers, but also just like the way it happened, the expectations, Jackson Dart coming on, just so brutal for Malik Nabers. Definitely some good takeaways, some positives to take away from week 4 as well. We got the Ashton Genty breakout game finally. Omari and Hampton building on some positive momentum from week 3. So definitely some good stuff to get into. Guys, we're going to talk about Nabers here at the top of the show. We'll have plenty of time for questions throughout. I will get into the any second round pick list, which I did last week. I'm going to try to make that a weekly thing. And then I'm going to just do a bunch of risers and fallers, talk about a bunch of different players and why my opinions on them are changing. And hopefully we can get to all the really cool stuff, all the really important stuff today. I see a lot of you guys in the chat, a lot of members. Goldhorn here checking in to report it was Kenny Gainwell season. It was. I had to start Kenny Gainwell in one league where Warren was out, and I'm very grateful for his service. It was quite a game for Mr. Gainwell over in Ireland. Austin is here, mourning the loss of Malik Nabers. We're all mourning, for sure. I mean, it's terrible. It's just one of the. I mean, it's absolutely the worst part of this game, is the injuries, especially the ones that seem to come with totally at random, just nothing happened, and then a player's knee just basically explodes. It's so brutal. But as far as our Dynasty teams, we will figure out what to do. We'll keep moving on. The Pokemon guy is here. Max is here. Lots of members. Ryan is here. Nico is here. Moment of silence for our fallen soldier. Yeah, so we're going to jump right in and talk about Malik Nabers. You guys can let me know what you're thinking about Nabers. I'll tell you where I've got him ranked now, how I'm going to try to handle this. I haven't had any time to go into my leagues and really send out offers yet. But I did update the Dynasty rankings today. And I moved Malik Nabers down, obviously, from, I believe I had him 4th overall. I had him as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. And I moved him down right now, preliminary, first update of the week. I definitely move things around throughout the week, but right now I've moved him down to 18th overall. So that would put him in like the mid-second round of Dynasty startups. I have him behind Ashton Genty, after Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Trey McBride, Drake May, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously Bijan and Gibbs. I think that you can justify trading him for pretty much any of those players. I guess Herbert and Mahomes are the ones that I have maybe the least conviction on there, but they're both really, really good quarterbacks. They're both producing for fantasy right now. Mahomes, I think, has been pretty encouraging this season compared to the last two, getting Rice back in after week 6. So, you know, good looks there. And there's been a lot of quarterbacks underwhelming this year. So it is valuable to have those top quarterbacks. I have him right next to JSN. I have him ahead of JSN, but I don't think it would be, I don't think it would be insane to trade Malik Nabers for JSN. And it makes me sick to my stomach to even say that out loud. But I do think, you know, he's a very young wide receiver. He is dominating. He's going to help you out a lot the rest of the season, presumably. So would I still expect Malik Nabers to have the better career? Do I think he's more likely to give us like an overall wide receiver 1 season? Yeah, absolutely I do. But I think you have to make these trade-offs sometimes in Dynasty where it's like, if you're competing right now, we talk about how, you know, one player isn't going to be the difference, but when it comes to players like Nabers that have that league-winning type of ceiling, they can be the difference. And if you have the amount of Dynasty value wrapped up in a Malik Nabers can probably be put to better use if you are a contending team. So I think anywhere that I have Nabers that I still think I'm a contender, and there are probably a couple of teams where this is going to be the thing that causes me to flip the switch, I am going to shop him around and see what I can do. I really don't want to be tearing down, you know, way down to guys like, I don't want to go way down to guys like Garrett Wilson or Zay Flowers or whatever, because I just don't know if those guys are going to be impactful enough. But if I can pivot to somebody that is in the midst of a very high ceiling, you know, league winning potentially type of season, I think that you can justify doing that. JP asks, how can I get a team review or playbook on what I should do with my team? You can check the description. There's a link to a Google form where you can purchase a team breakdown. I'm planning to knock out 3 or 4 of those tonight after the stream because I am a little bit backed up on those. But we've got some clarity about some team situations after week 4. Hopefully get some of those sent out soon. So if you are watching and you're waiting on one, I promise you I will be getting around to those soon. But yeah, Nabers is, I mean, on the other side of this, like, it sucks if you have Nabers and you are a contender. On the other side, though, if we're going to try to find a silver lining here, this is an incredible buying opportunity for teams where you have a lot of value or you have a rebuilding team. Because, like, we talk about consolidation trades and making deals to try to get scarce assets in Dynasty, and it's very hard to go out and get a player in the middle of the season who is scoring a ton of points. So when you have a player that's out for the year who's not going to score any points but is still just 22 years old, it's going to be an amazing opportunity to go and get that player at a discount. So you want to leverage that wherever you can. I'm not saying go out of your way to rebuild your team so you can go get Nabers. Like, you're not going to want to do that for any singular player. But it should be your number one priority on rebuilding teams to see if you can, in fact, get Nabers at some kind of a discount. For the people talking about the injury in the chat, it's not an Achilles injury. It is an ACL tear. And what we're going to hope for is, unless this is confirmed already, we're going to hope for after the testing is that this is a clean tear. And hopefully, with it being non-contact, I think there's a good chance that it's a clean ACL tear. And because it happened so early in the season, I think there's a very good chance that he is 100% for week 1 of next year. Because it's like 10 months out is about when you can expect it for a player that's as young as he is. And again, as early as it happened in the season, I think good bet that he is going to be ready to go next season, week 1. He'll be 23. So this is a guy that should bounce back in terms of his value. I would not be surprised if by week 2, week 3 next year, he's already back into the top 10. Maybe higher. So you want to take advantage if you can. And if you have a contending team that is like crazy stacked on value, like you have flexibility with extra picks or whatever, you can go out and try to get him. It's fine. Like, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a rebuilding situation only. It's just that most teams aren't going to have that luxury. So some things that I will be looking to send for Nabers, I mean, really any like sub-elite assets I'm going to want to be packaging together to go and get Nabers. So like this right here, Wendell says Nabers for Egbuka and CMC. I feel like this is, if you are a contender, I think this is a fantastic return if you can actually move Nabers for this pair of players. Because like I don't think Egbuka is as good as Nabers, but he is a very, very good and very valuable young wide receiver. And then you get a player in CMC who's one of the most valuable in fantasy. I mean, this seems like an ideal trade. I don't know how often you can get something like this done. I'm not thrilled about the idea of sending something like this, Nabers and a first for Lamb, because I still have Nabers in that tier with Lamb, Jefferson, like just at the bottom of it. I think that's a lot to pay for the production rest of season, because he's probably going to be ranked close to those guys next year. So it's like, would you want to send your own first for just whatever we have left, 12 or 13 games of CeeDee Lamb, and probably less because Lamb's not going to be back for the next couple weeks and he could be limited. Like, you're probably paying a first for like 8 games of CeeDee Lamb at full strength. I think that's a little bit steep. I'd rather be making more of a straight pivot. Like, I think you could send Nabers for like Nico Collins with a plus, like a nice plus on top. I think that's a reasonable thing to explore, or like maybe London with a solid plus on top. Hampton, maybe Amari and Hampton with a plus on top. Egbuka. I think those are some guys you can look at. JSN. I did see Dynasty Zoltan. If you guys know him, I don't know, on Twitter. He traded Nabers for JSN and a 2027 second. So if you feel weird about doing it straight up, get a second on top would be nice. Or trying to send something that's less than a first for Amon-Ra, Lamb, Jefferson, something like that. I mean, the best thing you can do is really go to the teams in your league that look like they are rebuilding, on the verge of it, or have already started rebuilding, and see what their high value players are and see if you can make a deal work with them, because you guys have mutual goals there, where it's like they're trying to shed points and get younger. They're going to be more interested in getting Nabers, and you could use the point scorers they have. So if they're a relatively reasonable person, you can probably figure something out. And that's what I'll be trying to do with my shares. As far as the rest of the Giants are concerned, this sucks for Jackson Dart, where he was looking pretty solid in that game, and I'm still excited about him, but just the idea that he is going to lose such an impactful weapon for the rest of the year, it's going to really negatively impact the passing game and just the scoring opportunities in general. So, like, I probably would have moved Jackson Dart up even more in my rankings if this hadn't happened, but it's harder to be optimistic about how this is going to go rest of season. Certainly, you get a little bump for Wan'Dale Robinson, for Theo Johnson. If you were in like a start 11 or start 12 league, I guess Darius Slayton is back on the menu. Probably even more checkdowns for Cam Skattebo. None of these guys, I mean, Skattebo's got solid value. None of these other guys are super valuable, but they're guys you can probably start in a pinch in bye week situations. For what it's worth, Ryan Heath dropped the data day after the games. The target shares for the time that Nabers was out of the game: Theo Johnson 30%, Wan'Dale Robinson 30%, Slayton and Skattebo both at 15.4%. So Darius Slayton getting more of those downfield targets. Theo, Wan'Dale are getting more of those shorter area looks. There's probably going to be a lot of those in this offense, a lot of scrambles from Dart as well. And then Skattebo is just like the whole backfield right now. He got 83% of the weighted opportunities without Tracy there. He got all 5 backfield carries inside the 10, according to Ryan Heath. So the offense is probably not going to be that good without Nabers, but there's just going to be volume there for Skattebo. He looks pretty decent. He gets the high value touches, red zone, passing game. So I'm still high on him. I'm still high on Dart, but it is a massive bummer if you're a Giants fan, if you are a Dart investor. All across the board, it just sucks. The only people that are winning right now are the Wan'Dale and Theo Johnson truthers, to be honest. Question here from Mike Petrosky. If you are rebuilding, would you send Gibbs for Nabers? I think that you can and should demand a plus on top to make that move. Like Gibbs is pretty universally going to be valued ahead. And I don't think Gibbs is still very young. So I don't think that you need to do that. I think I would just rather hold Gibbs unless they're going to give you a plus, at least like a second on top. And yes, I would trade Travis Hunter in a late first for Malik Nabers. I think you're jumping back into that tier of assets that you know are elite. I think that's absolutely worth doing. Interesting point here from Phil, who says, I think the best move is to move Nabers aggressively now as value is going to drop more as the reality of the injury sets in. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I'm not sure. I mean, that's not going to be true for every league. Like, I know what the reality is, that he's not going to play until next year. I don't foresee myself moving him down significantly from where I have him because I already know what I'm signing up for. The only thing that would change that is if we found out it was really bad, like it was worse than anticipated, and he's got complications and things like that. But I don't think that I'm going to be moving him down much more. The thing with Brandon Ayuk is that he did have complications, and he had more than a clean ACL tear. He had other ligament damage, and then he got another surgery. So it's like, yes, if we got news that Nabers had a setback or a bad surgery or he had more ligament tears, then yes, I would agree that his value could fall further. A clean ACL tear, it's not really on the table if that's what happened. So hopefully that's the case. If you have Nabers, I'd be willing to sell him for Brian Thomas Jr. in a first. I know that it's been rough with Brian Thomas. I'm just not really ready to throw out his rookie year entirely. I think he's probably dealing with an injury right now. But I would still take Brian Thomas in a first. I think that's enough to make that move and get a guy that's hopefully going to bounce back and be productive for you. I'll answer a few more Nabers trades, and then we will move on to whatever our next thing is. Taylor Ashton says the Nabers injury really hurts. I'm shallow at wide receiver now with JSN, Roman Downs, any wide receiver targets. So that's a good question. If you lost Nabers, who are some wide receivers you can look for in the short term, intermediate term to maybe fill that hole? It's going to vary depending on your league, like who is contending, who's rebuilding, and what players are on those teams. I really like Michael Pittman as a trade target that kind of hovers around second round something value. I like Cortland Sutton as another guy. Devontae Adams is probably worth a little more than that right now with how much he's dominating the target shares, but 32-year-old wide receiver, if he's on a team that's struggling, you can probably get him for a second and a throw in, a rookie or something. I think you can always pretty much be fine sending a second round pick for Jacoby Myers. Maybe Chris Godwin. He got 10 targets first game back. It wasn't very efficient, but good defense, getting eased back in. We don't know how long Evans is going to be out for. I think you could do worse than sending a second for Chris Godwin. Those would probably be my main guys that are like gettable. I throw Deebo Samuel into that conversation as well. I think his value is probably rising at this point, where it would be very hard to get him for just a second right now. But if you have some guys you could move, you could also you could try sending Downs with a second for like George Pickens. I don't know. Yeah, those would be some ideas. I don't have the specifics yet. Papacino, my guess is clean ACL because of how it happened, but we have not gotten word yet. I do find this question funny. No offense to Junior S. Does Luke McCaffrey take away from Jalen Lane? I wasn't aware that Jalen Lane had anything to be taken away. But if he did, then yes, I would say he does. I would say that it does take away from him. Yeah. All right. Oh, here's an interesting one. Nabers, or it's actually not it's not interesting. I mean, I think it's a smash. Nabers or Garrett Wilson plus Hampton. I would take the Hampton side for sure by a wide margin there. I think Hampton is very, very valuable asset in Dynasty right now. Let's see. What would you add on top of Hampton for Nabers on a hard rebuild? I would try with a second first. I think you can definitely do it with a second. Like if someone accepts that, I would do it. All right. We're going to move on from the Nabers questions and just questions in general. I will definitely take more questions later on. I'm going to get to the any second round pick list. So just to explain this, I started doing this last week. This is a list of players that I am officially fine trading away for any second round pick in Dynasty. So some of these guys I have ranked as like late second round values, but I'm totally fine taking a second round pick if I'm not actively relying on one of these players. And in some cases, I would be thrilled to get a second. Now, this is not saying that you're going to be able to get a second in every league, but I know there's a ton of variance from league to league. On the fantasycalc.com rankings, all of these players are ranked comfortably ahead of their late second round pick value. So if you can get somebody's 26 second or even better, a 2027 second that's got more variance, more potential to be early, I would be selling any of these guys. Last week, it was Diggs, who actually did show a little bit of life. I still wouldn't feel that bad if I sent him for a second, but potentially getting healthier, maybe a little bit better. David Njoku, Rashid Shaheed, Troy Franklin, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, DeAndre Swift, Dylan Sampson, Tyrone Tracy, Isaiah Pacheco. Feeling pretty good about those calls. If you were able to get a second for any of those guys, feel free to let me know. Certainly Andrews is still flirting with fantasy relevance after he had that big 30-point game to just like rub it in my face. Maybe not as washed as he looked the first two games, but Isaiah likely will be back soon, and I think that could hurt his snap counts and route rates and all that stuff. Njoku trending down for sure. Franklin kind of went back to being a nothing. We'll see what he does tonight. Swift is what he is right now, which is a terrible football player who gets a lot of touches. The rug pull is coming sometime. Sampson got 2 touches, unfortunately. Tracy is going to be a handcuff when he comes back, and Pacheco is like so dusty, it's not even funny. This week, pretty rough add to the list, Caleb Johnson. I just don't know what I'm supposed to think about Caleb Johnson at this point. Like, Jalen Warren misses the game, and he still does basically nothing. Kenny Gainwell scores 30 fantasy points and just, like, plays way better. I'm just not sure what we're hoping for at this point. We have third-round running backs that come into the league and bust pretty much every single year. You know, once upon a time, Darrington Evans was a third-round pick. Countless guys that for some reason are all just disappearing from my mind. You know, Kendre Miller, who we're finally hearing from, has done nothing for his first 2 years. At this point, it's like, I just think it's clinging a little bit too much to priors to say that Caleb Johnson is clearly better than just re-rolling with a second-round pick next year. So I'm re-rolling if I don't have any shares. But if I did, if someone offered me a second, I'll take it. I'd rather have the flexibility and to be able to just do what I want with that pick. Cedric Tillman, probably not happening right this second because he did suffer that hamstring injury and will probably miss a few weeks. But if you have some Tillman truthers out there who still want to give you a second for him because of what he's flashed when he's been healthy, I'm fine getting off of that Cleveland Browns roller coaster. Wan'Dale Robinson, this one feels very doable, and it's probably the one on the list I feel most uneasy about because anybody with a 30-ish% target share is going to have some level of relevance. I just don't think there's a lot of upside here with this offense set to be pretty brutal with the way that he plays. I think he's a fine player, but I would just rather have a second. Brenton Strange, totally fine player to use right now. If you are heavily reliant on him, like he's your only starting tight end, then I understand why you would want to hold him, but he's not going to be a difference maker. Like he's just a guy who gets targets when the offense isn't working that well. He's kind of like Kate Otten-esque. His utility has limits, and what you're seeing right now is kind of, I think, the best that you can expect from him. And I like to cash out on players like that at the ceiling. Ramondre Stevenson, another one that's been trending down, so like maybe not gonna happen, but he's still technically a starting running back. He's had a couple of good games. If he has another good game, maybe you can take that second and run with it. People are getting desperate for running backs right now with bye weeks coming. And then the last one on the list is Mason Taylor. This is just a guy like who seems to have had hype all along. And I don't really know why. He wasn't that productive in college. He just got some draft capital, and he's young, and that was kind of enough for people. He's a starter on this team, but he isn't really getting a lot of looks. It's a very, very bad passing offense. Does he have the potential to become something someday? Sure. But so does a second round pick. I would just rather have the flexibility there. So that's my any second round pick list. Question about Travion Henderson here from Rio. After sending Dart and Travion, after seeing them play yesterday, I'm a bit nervous. Do you remain confident in Travion going forward? Sure, why not? Yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't be confident in him. I mean, he's working through something with this pass protection stuff and these holding penalties, which is weird. I didn't get to watch like every touch that he had, but he looked good when I saw him play. He did get the touchdown. He was more involved in the first half. I looked at the snap counts. He played about equal snaps with Ramondre in the first half, had about equal touches. He had the only running back targets on the team in the first half. And then you look at the final box score, it looks different, but he actually played less in the second half once the game was a blowout, which did reduce his overall snap share. So I think it's pretty encouraging that we saw some uptick in usage. I think the coaches are still being absolute boomers about this. I think he should have been like the clear focal point or like lead back of the team after those fumbles that we saw in week 3, but I do remain very bullish on him. Yeah. And then Jackson Dart, I don't think you need to be concerned about him at all. Like, he won the game. Like, he played well. He ran a lot, which is really cool. I can't guarantee you that Dart is like this long-term hit at quarterback. Like, Will Levis had a really, really good first game in the NFL. So I think it would be crazy to just assume that we know for sure how this is going to play out. But I have ranked him pretty highly. He's on that like top 50 fringe for me in Dynasty. So like borderline 4th round startup pick if we were drafting today. I think that's pretty generous. But yeah, I mean, I liked what I saw. It was definitely encouraging. We just need the team to win some more games and hopefully not have like a total regime change next year or have like a super early first round pick where they can be tempted by a quarterback. But if you have Dart, this is what you want to see for sure. All right, let's talk about some risers and fallers. This is going to be probably a pretty long segment because I have a lot of risers and fallers from the rankings update. We'll start with risers. Let's be positive today. And let's just move one guy at a time here. We'll start with Amari Hampton. Amari Hampton I didn't put Ashton Jeanty here, by the way, because he wasn't really a riser for me. I never really moved him down. But obviously you have to be encouraged by the game that he had. Like, they finally did give him some notes that I had on Jeanty that I thought were positive, or at least one note that I made. Where did I write this down? Zamir White was a healthy scratch in this game, and they also let Jeanty play in the 2-minute drill at the end of the game. They had not been letting him play in 2-minute drill situations. So that was encouraging to see that he's working his way into, more trust, more game situations. Obviously, he played incredibly. I don't think you put this genie back in the bottle with Jeanty. I think he dominates carries moving forward. I think he's going to play more in passing situations. I'm hopeful that he gives us easy RB1 production rest of season and lives up to his Dynasty price tag at this point. I don't know what you'd have to see from him at this point to be convinced in the talent. It's just about whether the offensive line can give him enough space to operate week to week. But anyway, back to Hampton here. I mean, it's been awesome for Hampton. I got this tweet here from Dwayne McFarland. 3 games so far with Najee Harris out or in a limited role, which was weeks 1, 3, and 4. He was an every down running back. He had He has over 20 points per game in those 3 contests combined, 82% snap share, 81% of running back attempts, 100% of snaps inside the 5. He has run 66% of the routes and gotten a 12% target share in those games. He's also playing all of the 2-minute drill. Like, he is the offense. It's like he's playing like Jonathan Taylor type of role right now, or like I don't know, like Kyron Williams but good type of role right now. Like, he's playing all the snaps in all the situations. So the expected points are just through the roof. This is very, very encouraging. And I think he's looked really good. Despite some of the early criticisms of him, I think he's looked really, really good. So you have to be happy about Hampton. I've moved him up tremendously. Well, I had him quite high already, but my RB4 in Dynasty, 26th overall player. I think probably we'll see even higher soon. But same company as like Tedero McMillan, Drake London, Emeka Egbuka, that type of company. It's a very, very good spot to be in for sure. Next up, Quentin Johnston. This is one that like just absolutely boggles my mind. I really don't know what to say about Quentin Johnston. Like, I think that it was totally reasonable after what we had seen from Quentin Johnston through 2 years to essentially have written him off as, nothing more than an average player. And what we are seeing right now is just shocking. Like, I'm fine taking an L. I just don't really know what we were supposed to look at that was going to point to this happening. I don't get it at all. And it sucks for me as somebody who does not have Quentin Johnston and has a lot of Ladd McConkey. But there's just nothing fake about what we're seeing so far. Like, he's doing it every single week in every single matchup. He is the top target on the team right now. I don't know. I would love to hear that Ladd McConkey has like some phantom injury or something, but for the time being, this is real. I moved Johnston up into my late first round considerations. I just don't know how you keep him out at this point with what he's doing. Like, top 5 fantasy wide receiver. He's got an elite quarterback. Maybe he needs to be higher, but he's in my top 75. He's in the late first. There are certainly some type of priors that have been anchoring him down in the rankings, but again, I think that was warranted to some extent. Like, these 4 games are just so different from what we've seen so far. So yeah, you have to, hats off to Quentin Johnston for putting in the work and improving as a player. He's an every week start at this point, and I don't think you should trade him unless you're getting a first round pick. I just think that's where we're at this point. Papachino says, DF Bean counter was never wrong, only early. Yeah, probably most people watching this right now have no idea who that even is, but DF Bean counter was a big analytics guy on Twitter, had a big Discord server. He was a big Quentin Johnston guy. He kind of dropped off the face of the earth about a year and a half ago. So hopefully he's seeing this and smiling about it. Quinshon Judkins, another riser. Look, this one I'll take the L on. I was lower on Quinshon Judkins throughout the process. I think the legal stuff was pretty hard to parse, and I don't really feel bad about how I handled that. But I did have him lower as a prospect. I was worried about his inefficiency in college, and it turns out big guy run fast, gets drafted early, is good enough for the NFL meta. So, even on a bad team, he is dominating touches. What we saw from Quinshon Judkins this week, if I can find it. Let's see here. He had 21 of the 23 backfield carries. He had an 11% target share, which is huge. I didn't know for sure if he was going to get targets, and he did. 18.8 weighted opportunities, which combines targets and carries and gives targets the extra weight that they deserve compared to carries. Top 5 through the early slate on Sunday. He's like a borderline RB1 right now, and obviously if the Browns offense finds a way to improve, there's upside for more there. So he has been one of the players that raised up in the rankings the most. Shout out to the Dynasty domain guys for holding the line on this all offseason, being incredibly high on Quinshon Judkins. I just wasn't. And now I have him as a borderline top 40 pick in Dynasty, top 10 Dynasty running back at this point, pretty clearly. I think that if you could trade, I think that if you could trade Saquon Barkley for Quinshon Judkins in Dynasty, I think you should do it. You guys will have to give me a temperature check on whether that's possible, but I think that would be a prudent decision at this point. I already talked about Dart. He's a riser. He looked good. He ran a lot, which was awesome to see. They had a lot of designed runs for him. He kept his poise. He was aggressive. He managed, I don't put a lot of stock in QB wins, but obviously he played really well and got them the win. That's going to be good for his, longevity if he can find a way to win games. So Jackson Dart, man, it's a good day to have Jackson Dart in Dynasty. I would rather have him at this point than JJ McCarthy. I'd rather have him than Trevor Lawrence. I'll take him over Michael Penix, Jared Goff. You want to have Jackson Dart. I think it's a conversation between Dart and Cam Ward at this point. Ward has that 101 capital that's going to grant him a longer leash. That's just a fact. Dart has the rushing. He has looked better so far. I think it's actually a decent argument, to just flip them in Dynasty right now. Got a little super chat here from No Thank You. I appreciate you. That's very kind. It says, looks like I'm contending in my first year, Superflex League. Traded a second, third, and third for Kyler. Traded down for the third in the startup draft. Yeah, that's a great price to pay for Kyler. It's awesome. Kyler Murray has not been phenomenal, but he's absolutely worth, I'd say, significantly more than a second and 2/3. So that's a great move for you. Good luck to you in your contending this year. Hopefully you're able to win it all. And I really appreciate the super chat there, my friend. Next riser is Woody Marks. I'm seeing some Woody Marks chatter in the chat. I have moved him up. I would say let's just settle down a little bit. Certainly he's a big riser. I moved him up into my base second tier. So he's worth more than a late 2 to me. I would still sell him for an early second round pick. He is a 24-year-old rookie. Certainly showing a lot more as a rusher than I expected. He's looking really good. He's looking great with the ball in his hands. He's probably going to be, the lead guy for the Texans. I don't think Chubb's going to go completely away, but Marks is probably going to get the most touches moving forward. He's going to get the most valuable touches through the air. It's just a really bad team right now, which is the problem. And it's still hard to bank on long-term staying power for these day 3 running backs, especially an older guy. We saw this with Tyrone Tracy last year. It's very similar to Tyrone Tracy. 4th round pick, older running back prospect, has more of a pass catching background, is able to take over a bad backfield and, put together a lot of fantasy relevant weeks. And I fell for Tracy in the sense that I think I moved him up too high too quickly. And so I want to be a little more cautious with Marks. It's just we've seen this happen a lot of times with guys. But he looks good. Certainly if you drafted him late in your rookie draft, you feel fantastic about it, and you can start him as a high-end flex type of player. One thing I'll say, as far as other rookies that I've done, I moved Woody Marks ahead of Jaden Higgins. I moved him ahead of Caleb Johnson. I moved him ahead of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who is going to be on the fallers list, and I still like JCM. I think he's really good. But I think right now, when you look at the roles these two guys have and the short shelf life that these older day 3 running back prospects typically have, I think you just have to prioritize the immediate production that you can get out of a Woody Marks. So I did move him ahead. I would not trade 2 second-round picks for Woody Marks personally. That's just not how I operate. I just think, of course, there is upside. Of course, there's a way that could pay off. I just don't think it's the right way to do it. I just don't think it's the right move. So personally, that's too aggressive for me. I think there's better, more proven assets you could go after with 2 seconds. Certainly 1 second, I think is totally reasonable to pay if that's a guy you can slide into your lineup right now. Pepe Sylvia with the $10 super chat. You are an absolute goat, my friend. Let me help you answer this question. I'm going to answer your question even though I despise 1 QB leagues with all my heart and soul, because I appreciate the support. I really do. 2 trades in a start 8 league. Trade Saquon or Jacobs plus T to a running back needy team for Egbuka and a 2027 first. And the other one is I was offered Nico and a 2027 first for JSN. Values there, but I'm torn. I would absolutely take the Nico plus 2027 first side of the JSN trade. I did move JSN ahead of Nico recently. I would not put a first round pick worth of value between them. I would love to have that extra first. So take the Nico side there. The other one, Saquon or Jacobs plus T Higgins. I still have Saquon ahead of Jacobs in Dynasty. Gap is definitely closing, but I do have him ahead. Plus T Higgins for Egbuka and a first. Yeah, I would absolutely do that as well, because I would rather have Egbuka than either of those 2 running backs, and I would rather have the 27 first than T Higgins. So, yeah, I would be taking the Egbuka and a first and the Nico and a first side of those trades. And again, appreciate the chat. Alrighty. Next guy here is Kyle Pitts. I did see a question about Alec Iomanner, so let me just double check on that. It's just buy Iomanner. Yeah, I would buy him. I moved him up to the early second tier. I think you have to be encouraged by the route rates. In fact, we're going to talk about Ridley as a faller here in a little bit. Ridley is pretty much dead at this point. It's like basically, career basically over for Calvin Ridley at this point. Tyler Lockett and Alec Iomanner ran over 90% of the routes. Calvin Ridley ran 41% of the routes. So that's a big yikes. I heard nothing about him being injured. I still haven't heard anything about him being injured. They straight up just cut his routes in half. He ran fewer routes than Van Jefferson. So pretty much curtains, I think, for Calvin Ridley's career. Alec, though, 90% of routes. The passing offense is a total disaster right now. I don't really put that on him. He seems to keep getting open on these scramble drill plays. Like, he seems to have really good awareness. I can't speak to, the route running chops or anything. Like, that's just not my area of expertise. I'd be very curious to see like how Matt Harmon would chart him so far, but from everything we can look at, from getting on the field early as a day 3 pick to earning targets to rising above the competition, you have to love it. So he's an early second round type of value for me. I would take him, ahead of any of the wide receivers I think that we saw go on day 2 pretty much in the draft. Ahead of, Higgins, obviously ahead of like, Jack Besh, Kyle Williams, Jalen Knoll. Like, those guys are way behind him at this point. But I would probably send one of those guys plus a second for Iomanner. It's just a tough spot with him where he's not really a reliable start. He's just kind of an investment for later. So you have to kind of think about where your team's at and what the best way to spend your assets is. Kyle Pitts is a riser. Another one of those guys that I just kind of thought we were done talking about. I was ready to put the Kyle Pitts thing to bed last year because he was so far removed from that injury and still just looked like he had no juice whatsoever. And yet he's finding a way. And it's not fluky either. Like, the Falcons changed their offense to get Pitts on the field more. And I'm not even sure it was a smart thing to do, but they did it because he is running the second most routes, or I should say the second highest percentage of routes of any tight end right now. And last year, that was not the case. Last year, they were running all these 3 wide receiver sets with London, Mooney, and Ray McLeod. And they said this year, no more McLeod. We want Pitts on the field. He's been on the field. He is not like smashing for fantasy, and I do question, like, I don't really think there's like an elite ceiling here. I think what we're seeing now is kind of what we should expect, but it's way more useful than I anticipated. I have moved him up. He is now my tight end 11. I have him right there with Jake Ferguson, who's just getting absolutely insane usage this season. Personally, I would still rather have Harold Fannin. I'd still rather have George Kittle if you want to bet on that, like, return later on, for like an elite ceiling. I still have TJ Hawkinson ahead of him, and I'm not really sure why. Like, I'm I think maybe I just need to move TJ Hawkinson even further down. He's already on the fallers list. I think I just need to move him even further down. I don't know what we're hoping for at this point with TJ Hawkinson. When is it going to get better? I just don't know when it's going to get better. I think he just is this now. So a couple late guys at this point. Kendre Miller showed real signs of life in this game for the Saints. He got 11 carries versus 15 for Kamara. Broke off a really incredible long touchdown run. He is not really a guy that you're ever going to start unless Kamara's out. But he's now a much more interesting handcuff than he was before, because we're at least seeing some proof of concept that the team will use him and that he is talented. So he has to be a riser. Brashard Smith. Let me see if I can pull up the usage from the game. Let me see. The usage from the game was very interesting. We started to see Brashard Smith come alive. He played 25% of the snaps. He had 4 rush attempts, and he had 4 targets. So 8 total opportunities for Brashard Smith. There was a quote from Matt Nagy that they wanted to get him even more involved. He had a 10% target share. This is amazing for a 7th round rookie running back in his 4th game. Love that. Absolutely love that. Isaiah Pacheco is like so beyond cooked. Like, it is so over for him. Brashard Smith at least has that upside to potentially take over the backfield. So I definitely want to be adding Brashard Smith on the cheap if you can still get shares of him before people really catch on. And then lastly, Isaiah Bond. Last riser for today, guys. And then we're going to flip over to the faller side. Tweet from Nick Ercolano. Isaiah Bond's route percentage by week. Week 1, 23%. Week 2, 39%. Week 3, 58%. Week 4, 71%. 71%. Cedric Tillman is now expected to be out for multiple weeks with this hamstring injury. Isaiah Bond is the de facto wide receiver 2 for this team. Certainly, you still have Harold Fannin. You still have David Njoku involved. I definitely hope and wouldn't be surprised if Harold Fannin out-targets Bond, but I think Bond could be the 3rd target on this team based on what we've seen so far. He had an interesting prospect profile. The NFL viewed him as a day 2 type of pick before the off-field stuff. So it's not insane that he would return value once he gets on the field, based on his prospect profile and his previous pedigree. Definitely a guy you want to be adding if you still can. Get him thrown into some trades just to see. It's still a bad offense. Joe Flacco's going to get benched at some point, but you have to be interested in Isaiah Bond. Tate, I would take Io Manor pretty comfortably over Jalen Coker. As much as I love him, I would still take Ellick. All right, let's get over to the fallers here, guys. And we'll go back to the top here. This one might seem strange. Saquon Barkley as a faller. He had a pretty solid game. This is just adjusting for what we've seen thus far in the season, which is the running game is inefficient for Philadelphia. I don't think that means Saquon Barkley is like washed by any means. I think he's still very good. But this type of efficiency dip is what we almost always see when guys come off of this type of volume. And you also just have this natural variance year over year where like he was reliant on breaking these massive runs. And what we're seeing right now in terms of his efficiency is all of the same types of runs, but just minus 150-yard run per game. Like that was bringing his yards per carry up to 5.5, or whatever it was in those games. When he's not breaking the 50-yard run, then he's just sitting here at 3 yards per carry. He's not getting enough work in the passing game. He's not getting a good enough goal line role to combat all of those factors at age 28. So I think I might even move him down further. I have him at RB11 in Dynasty right now. I would take James Cook over him straight up. I would take Quinshon Judkins over him straight up. he's still going to be super useful rest of the season. And he's probably going to be fine again next year, but he's not like league winning Saquon Barkley right now. And I don't know if he will be again. Another super chat here from Fenny Whopper. Dude, I appreciate you guys so much. This is amazing. Message 1 of 2. Evaluate trades I made. Absolutely. Traded Ladd, Benson, and a second for Genty and a third. Okay. Let me read this again. He traded Ladd, Benson, and a second for Genty and a third. It makes me really sad to admit that this is an awesome trade. But I think with what we've been seeing from Ladd McConkey recently, I think you have to be very happy about that price tag to jump, multiple tiers in dynasty value. So I like that deal. The other one was traded Golden and 2 firsts for JSN, a second and a third. These are always tough when you don't know how the firsts are projected. But I do think that this is a good trade. I think Golden is sitting on that sort of late 1 borderline. So you're talking about a late 1 and 2 firsts for JSN, a second and a third. I think he's worth that at this point from what we've seen. I have him all the way up inside my top 20. So when you can consolidate value like that around a top asset, I think you want to do that almost every time. As long as the value is, in the ballpark. And that definitely is. So, yeah, I'm a fan of both of those trades. If there's a second message, let me know. But I appreciate the super chat there. And Papacino, I am in denial right now about Ladd, so I will not be putting him on the fallers list. I already lost Malik Nabers this week, and I would ask for a little bit of space during these trying times. Next faller for me is A.J. Brown. We got 2 Eagles here. We got a 4-0 team that doesn't want to use its best players properly. A.J. Brown is probably still an amazing wide receiver. He's on a team that doesn't throw the ball very much, and when it does, isn't necessarily using him to the best of his abilities. So you have a 27-year-old wide receiver who is wasting away a full season of his prime. I know there's been drama online. I do not think A.J. Brown is going to another team. I really, really don't. I think that's incredible wish casting, and I certainly hope he doesn't as an Eagles fan, but I don't think he's going anywhere. So, we're going to be back to this same song and dance again next year. I just don't know when it's going to get better. On pure talent, he should be ranked much higher than he is. I have him at wide receiver 20 in Dynasty, but as it stands with the way this offense is operating, I just don't know how you can rank him a lot higher than that. Bryce Young is just bad at football. We got this little stretch of mirage games last year, the end of the season. I think Bryce Young is the quarterback that we saw for the rest of the games. And my goodness, man, Tedero McMillan is so frustrating to have in fantasy when this absolute joker is throwing him the ball. Like, McMillan should be a fantasy wide receiver 1 already. The way that he gets open, the way that he dominates, it's insane. The targets he has every week to only have like 50% of them be catchable is so frustrating. I just feel like it's going to be over sooner than later for Bryce. And even if he survives and like manages to be a starter, what is the upside here? Like, what is the point? This is not like a Justin Fields type of quarterback where you get something when he's on the field. When he's on the field, he's like a low-end QB2. So I just don't know what the point is with Bryce Young anymore. We already talked about Hawkinson. He has that history as a high-end producer. He's not doing it. Maybe this is still lingering effects of that ACL tear from 2023, but we're talking about almost 2 years since that injury occurred. It's a crowded offense with Jefferson. It's a crowded offense with Addison as well. And it's also a more run-heavy offense than we saw last year. All of those factors together are just very meh for Hawkinson, who's like, I think 28 years old. He's not like super duper young. Hawkinson is just very meh at this point. I think he belongs in the same conversation with Ferguson and Pitts in kind of that mid-second round price range. Wouldn't mess around with him any higher than that. JCM, talked about him already. I'll come back to the chat here, guys, in just a little bit. I want to get through these last few. JCM is a faller for me. Now, this is a weird one where I did move him down just to be realistic. I'd be looking to buy low on JCM personally. Let me just throw out some stats here from Dynasty Zoltan. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt ranks first in the NFL in yards per attempt at 5.9 yards. He has a 38% first down rate, which is first, 72% success rate, first, 14% explosive rate, which is seventh, 4.0 yards after contact per attempt, which is fifth, and he is first in PFF rushing grade. I don't think we've seen anything yet that would suggest JCM is anything but a really good rusher. He also has the most targets at running back for the team since Eckler went down, which isn't saying a lot, but it's still something, I guess. He's an older running back, so it's like he's an older prospect, I should say. So it's like, how long can you really wait on it? But I still wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, he is the clear lead back here. And I would be willing to buy. If you can get him for less than a second, I think it's a really great time to speculate on some JCM shares. Caleb Johnson, we already talked about. I'm selling him for any second round pick. He didn't really get a lot of work with Warren out. He didn't look very impressive once again. I just don't see how he's working his way into a significant role. Pacheco, again, we talked about it. He had his lowest snap share, touch share of the season this past week. He got way out carried by Kareem Hunt. I know he caught a touchdown to salvage his day. Maybe that's your last chance to sell. I would sell him for a third round pick. I really would. I think it's so clear that he's being phased out of this offense. And Calvin Ridley, same deal, being phased out, snap share reduced, route share reduced. He's, on the wrong side of 30. The passing game doesn't work anyway. And when it goes for these guys, it typically goes quick. So I think it's just, it's a sinking ship. I think you just want to get out while you still can on Calvin Ridley. So those are all our followers, guys. I have some more time, a little bit more time, maybe 5 minutes for questions. So let me just scroll back up in the chat. You guys can feel free to drop some more Dynasty questions, whether they're about Nabers, guys we've talked about so far, other players. Is Jaden Blue cooked? I mean, no. I don't think he ever carried value that was that high to begin with. I think he's still kind of in that third round speculation range. I think the biggest thing for Jaden Blue is that Javonte Williams actually looks good. That's going to make it way harder for him to get on the field. If somebody's going to give you a third round pick for him, yeah, I mean, I'd probably take it. Are we taking a first and Javonte for AJ Brown? If it's the first of a bye week team, I don't know how much that moves me. But if you really need a running back, I think you could do worse. Nick says, as a contender, can I continue to hold the bag on Ted? Absolutely, you can. Yes. You definitely need to hold on to McMillan. You can be a contender and have one of your high value pieces score as a low end wide receiver too. It's not that big a deal. He's still going to put up points. I think he's going to get better as the season goes along. What do I do with Kyron? I'm 1-3 right now. Yeah, I mean, you should move him. I think you should absolutely move him. I had a stat here on Kyron. His rush attempt shares by week. This is from Dwayne McFarland. Rush attempt shares per week. He had 78% of the rush attempts in week 1, 74% in week 2, 65% in week 3, 57% in week 4. Week 4, that was a close game all throughout it. He got 57% of the rush attempts. I talked about this offseason. I had Kyron as a sell, and I got plenty of things wrong, but I took a lot of heat for saying Kyron was a sell. And when he signed that contract extension, people were lining up to dunk on me. This is what I said. I said, he's going to be the starter. But they did invest in Jarquez Hunter. They still have Blake Corum. They talk highly about him. If they decide to just use Kyron a little bit less, he's not going to be this fantasy superstar because he is a volume-based bet, and he's not getting the volume that he's seen in previous years. So he's an RB2 now. He's not an RB1. He's an RB2. I don't think it's like this trend's just going to carry on until Blake Corum's the starter. Like, he's still the starter. He's probably going to sit here in this 57 to 65% range for the rest of the year. But that's enough to cut the top right off the ceiling. So if you can still sell him at anything close to preseason prices, I would do that. I would sell him for any first round pick personally. Second message coming in from Fenny Whopper. There was a second part. Appreciate you. 2 offers for Jefferson. Would you accept London, Caleb Williams, and a first for Jefferson and Purdy, or Garrett Wilson and 2 firsts for Jefferson straight up? Well, let me just take a look at what the rankings say. If you guys are interested in seeing the rankings, which do have trade value tiers, those are available. You can check out the pinned link in the chat or in the description. Sign up to be a member. When I look at my values here, I've got Drake London sitting around 2, little over 2 base firsts. I've got Garrett Wilson more at like 1.5-ish. Caleb Williams is very high up for me, up at 20th overall in my rankings at this point. I think I would take London, Caleb, and a first for Jefferson and Purdy, because I have a pretty decent gap at this point between Purdy and Caleb. I think London and a first is a little bit light for Jefferson, but when you throw in the difference at quarterback, I would take that. And I like that deal a little bit more than the other one, because I'm not as high on Garrett Wilson's ceiling, and you're not getting that quarterback upgrade. So I would take the London Caleb first, assuming this is a super flex league. If this is not a super flex league, I don't care at all about the quarterbacks, and I would take the other one. But assuming it's super flex, I would take the Caleb one. All right. Joaquin says, what is stopping James Cook from being ahead of guys like Saquon or Henderson? I already moved him ahead of Saquon today, and I think it would be reasonable to take him over Henderson. I'm still holding out hope on Henderson, is just as far as the age and the prospect profile. I think the pass catching upside, especially with how good Drake May looks, is very, very high. So I'm still going to lean Henderson, but I think it's absolutely defensible if you were to take James Cook. And guys, I am trying to get to a lot of these, but I am prioritizing the YouTube members just for what it's worth. Kyron and AJ Brown are Nabers. I would take Nabers here. I don't think that's enough. Or if you have the Kyron and AJ Brown side, yeah, I would absolutely send that. I would absolutely send that for Nabers. John Atlas, I think this is too much. I think that, like, you shouldn't have to pay this much right now. I understand that sometimes all that happens when these types of things go down is that you get a trade opportunity and not necessarily a discount, but I think you do need to get a discount, and Pickens, coming off of that game, has to be worth at least a first round pick on his own, if not a little bit more. And so it's like three first round picks for a wide receiver that just tore his ACL. That feels a little bit too steep. Nick, you can go back towards the beginning of the stream. I talked at length about Nabers, where I have him ranked. We talked through some trade opportunities, whatever. I think you would benefit from checking that out. The Pokemon guy wants to know about trading Emeka Egbuka and Diggs for Nabers. I think if you are a rebuilding team, that this is a reasonable deal, because I don't really think Diggs has much value long term. Egbuka, I would still prefer Nabers over by a decent bit. So I would take the Nabers side there. Jacobs for Pearsall and Tesla. I don't think Isaac Tesla has much dynasty value, if I'm being honest. I mean, I have him as he's like a third rounder for me. Like, he's a speculative guy that you could get thrown into a deal. He's not a guy that's going to move the needle for me in a trade. That being said, I have Pearsall ranked after this update just 5 spots behind Josh Jacobs. So I think it's like a dead even trade. And I think it just kind of depends on what you need. I think you could send Pearsall for Jacobs on a strong contender. Jacobs is the running back 2 in expected points per game, according to Hayden Winks He made a nice chart that he tweeted out, and he's just ahead in expected points, ahead of Gibbs, Taylor, Cook. He has a really great role right now, and he's always been a very solid back. So, yeah. We have another super chat here from CP17. Man, you guys really want me to keep doing these Monday streams, huh? CP17, appreciate you, dog. And he's a member, too. I just don't deserve you guys. Give away a mid-second for Josh Downs or Devonta Smith. I have Devonta Smith ranked ahead of Josh Downs. I wish I had Josh Downs higher, but he just isn't getting the routes. It's just like Adonai Mitchell ran more routes than Josh Downs, which I think is frankly unserious, and I think the Colts deserve to lose for it. But I have Devonta Smith ranked ahead. I can't say that it's like awesome for Smith right now, but he's a great wide receiver. He has, that every down role. He still is very talented. I think that if you could move a second for Devonta Smith, I think that's a good trade to make. The only place that would give me pause is like in a half PPR league. There are probably better guys you could go after with a second, maybe add a little bit more to a second, go after a running back or somebody that has more touchdown equity. But in a full PPR league, second for Devonta is solid. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this thing up here in a minute. I'll get to a couple more. John Morgan says, in general, would you start Benson or Ken Walker going forward? I would start Ken Walker if I had to choose, but I think you can also kind of look at matchups. If the Cardinals are in a matchup where they're going to be, where it's going to be very, it's going to be close, or they're playing a really bad rush defense, I could see going Benson. But I think Walker's just a better player, more likely to make a big play. So I would lean him. And finally, I traded away my Jacobs and Kmet for Woody Marks, Pickens, and a third last week. I think that's a great trade. I have Pickens ahead of Jacobs. Not by much, like really close. And then obviously Woody Marks and a third, like way over Cole Kmet. So that's a pretty awesome move. I love that. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this thing up and get out of here. We're over the hour mark here. I am, frankly, a little bit burned out from the rankings updates and from the note-taking and the question answering and all that. So I'm going to hope to continue to sort of digest this week 4 slate of games, continue making some updates, and kind of figure out where we need to go as far as this week's video. What's the most actionable stuff that I can bring to you this week? Keep an eye out on Thursday. Should be a new video dropping then. If you are not subscribed and you have watched this long, first of all, I don't know how anybody let me get through an hour and 7 minutes without saying the word subscribe, but please subscribe to the channel, and I will be back soon with more Dynasty content. I hope you guys have an amazing week and enjoy Monday Night Football.